welcome back to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show right here in your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.
And remember, our goal is always to guide you to personal and financial wellness. Well, welcome to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show this Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. like every Saturday on AM 1220 and FM 98.1. Don's not here today to tell you we're twice as good now that we're on AM and FM, and thank goodness for that. But I do want to invite you, like we do every week, to our website, donandgino.com. It is our hub. It is where we have 7 years of YouTube videos stored of all the things we've discussed since the market basically, unfortunately, crashed. And we're talking about today with a good friend of mine and guest, Steven De Vore with Sterling Realty, joining me.
How you doing?
Good. Good to have you back, bud. And so Steven and I were talking. We've known each other for 27 years. So
since we were in junior high school.
Yeah, a lot of history here. The good, the bad, and the ugly, so to speak. We've been through it all together.
Definitely.
Don't tell them you tried to save my life. That's not true. Not a true story if Steven tells you that anytime. He's laughing because he knows it's true.
No comment.
Yeah. So based on that no comment, you've kind of opened the door for us to tell people a little bit about yourself. And as Steven and I were growing up, he went to law school. And, first he went to UCLA and graduated from UCLA with a bachelor's in what?
I went to UCLA, studied political science, loved it, loved law, ended up going to law school, Loyola Law School, and becoming a civil business litigator. And,
what does that mean to us in English?
So there's different types of lawyers. There's lawyers that just do contracts. There's lawyers who do criminal law, family law. There's a lot of specialization. I'm the guy you called when you wanted to sue somebody or you're somebody who was suing you.
Okay,
and,
simple enough.
Pretty straightforward, and anything from personal injury to real estate to business to contract litigation, but just general disputes mostly.
Okay, and so as you were in that field working 16 hours a day, it wasn't exactly what you expected, right? I mean, I remember you saying, I'm not spending too much time in court.
I worked about 70 hours a week. I was away from my family, and I was pretty unhappy, and I called my best friend, guy sitting across from me, and I was thinking of doing some other stuff and ended up getting my real estate broker's license and kind of changed my life.
Yeah, no, it was great for Steven. One of the things that we know, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, is that unfortunately, like in every field, because it's true about every field, there's the top of the class and the bottom of the class.
Definitely.
In law, in real estate, in doctors, and in attorneys. And in real estate, it's I'm going to say the disparity is larger. I feel like the people who know what they're doing and the people who don't know what they're doing, there is a large community of licensed agents that don't know what they're doing. Now, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to get you in trouble, because the reality is you could get away with a lot of real estate transactions and nothing can go wrong.
Happens all the time.
Yeah. So the question is, it's like having a good doctor or a good surgeon. You just want to make sure that if something does go wrong, you're working with the right person.
I tell Gino all the time, to become a real estate agent, the barrier of entry is, to be honest with you, a junior high school education and a few classes and a simple test.
Yeah.
And it is really scary because, as I tell Gino, this is the largest transaction of most people's lives. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars on the line. And some of the people, and I deal with them on a regular basis, I represent buyers and sellers myself. And on the other side of the transaction, I see the mistakes. I see the pitfalls. I have to deal with them. I have to sometimes deal with people who are overseeing those people because they don't know what they're doing. And it scares me. And not that I've ever had a problem ended up in court, but I used to represent people in court in their real estate transactions that had problems with their broker or their different people, and it's not a fun place to be.
So what are the most common pitfalls? What could go wrong? One of those, for that famous word, what could possibly go wrong if I hire, and here's the number one mistake. Look, we all want to help our friends. We all want to, hey, my friend, my sister, my brother, my cousin just got their real estate license. They got to get their first transaction out of the way. They got to practice on somebody. It might as well be me. What could go wrong?
Well, I want to kind of, as an analogy, talk about, for example, criminal law. If, God forbid, you were in a situation where someone charged you with a crime, and would you want to hire someone who does it part-time to represent you for your life's at stake? Or would you want someone who does it every day and has the experience and who's going to look out for you and make better decisions? Because in the end, you could end up in jail. In the end, here, you could end up in court.
And how would I go about the selection process? Let's assume that I have a family friend that I thought of using as my realtor. I am considering using them as my realtor, but I'm not sure if that's the right choice. I have someone that's been recommended by a friend of mine. You have 2 or 3 choices, or the guy on all the bus benches, guy or gal on all the bus benches. How do I select the right realtor?
First of all, the bus benches I want to address first.
Okay.
Just because you see a lot of
signs. Is there even any bus benches left?
There are very few left. Yeah, there's no more public phones either, too. It's a fun one. But just because you see a lot of signs, or just because you see bus benches, or hear someone's name, that's marketing. That's not necessarily ability. That's not necessarily that they're going to serve you best. That just means they spend lots of money and they're good at promoting themselves. You can't equate smoke with fire. It does not necessarily mean the same thing. What I tell people, most importantly, is who you work with is someone you have to trust. You have to put your trust in that person. And in order to trust that person, you have to look at their experience, their knowledge, and how many deals, and talk to other people they've done business with. That is really important, because doing business with someone who doesn't know what they're doing, you may not realize that up front. You may not realize it at the end of the transaction, but you might get that letter a year or 2 later. And then you realize that, oops, I didn't know, and they didn't tell me, and I wish I would have done it differently.
All right, so we're sitting here with Steven De Vore with Sterling Realty discussing how to choose a real estate agent, particularly in this market. It's a challenging market. You want to make sure you work with a professional. You want to make sure somebody that's a tough negotiator. I think, these days the data about finding a house is super easy. You could find a house online. I mean, the reality is that finding a house, first of all, it's the least important part, I think, today of what needs to happen. The most important part is your contract has to look good. Your offer needs to be presented in a professional manner. You have to do everything possible to paint yourself in the best light so you can get your offer accepted, because you may be going up against 3 or 4 different people.
All the time. In my business, I go up against multiple people, and I'm confident in my abilities, and I try to explain to people the difference between what I do and what other people do. For example, the pitfalls and mistakes, as we talk to. Mm-hmm. And this is something that's really, we could go on for hours. I could go on for days with this.
But there's some big ones that happen all the time.
The big ones. Let me start with a few ones. Most importantly, one of the biggest mistakes I see on a regular basis is I see people not review things. Simple, just take the time. There in this digital age,
we live in a rush society. How many minutes am I supposed to give to signing my contract?
We live in a digital age. People send contracts now for you to review on the computer. People review them on their phone. But I'll be honest with you, as a lawyer, I don't like that. I think it's a mistake. What I do, you can sign digitally, that is okay, but print out the document. Review it in paper. Actually take the time to look line by line and ask questions. How many times I have where I send something to a client to review and I get it back 3 minutes later and it was 32 pages. There's no way they reviewed it. They just clicked on it. And they assume that I'm looking out for them, and because I prepared it, it's perfect. Nobody's perfect. That's why they call it practicing law or practicing medicine. They're still working out the kinks, and they're still learning and evolving every day.
I do believe they call it practicing real estate as well.
So
the good news is nobody ever calls it practicing mortgage, so you can be confident in your mortgage people. That's not entirely true either.
So the first thing you want to do is find someone good, and then once you're working with them and you're going through, most importantly, is take the time to review and understand what you're signing. Ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you won't get the answer. I went to law school. Every time we ask a professor, and someone would say, I have a dumb question. And the professor would say, it's not a dumb question unless you didn't ask it. Because even if it's a simple question, if you don't ask it, you're never going to get the answer.
All right. Well, now I'm going to drill you a little more when we come back, and I'm going to make sure that you give us the top. I've been trying to get the top 2 or 3 mistakes out of you. I think you're going to hold those back for us to the next segment. So when we come back, we'll get the top 2 or 3 mistakes that we get from Sterling Realty Group and Steven De Vore, and we'll talk a little bit about where this market's going. There was a huge article in CNBC this week about the crash and the bubble. So when we get back to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show, we'll talk about the crash.